A scattered dream that's like a far-off memory. A far-off memory that's like a scattered dream. I want to line the pieces up. Yours and mine.
Have you ever heard of the Sunday Scaries? It's a term that refers to the feeling of dread many people experience on Sundays, and especially on Sunday nights. Even if you've never heard the term before, the feeling is pretty common, and there's a lot of reasons you might feel that way. Maybe you feel like you wasted your weekend, like your free time is about to give way to responsibility and you haven't done anything meaningful with it. Maybe you had a busy weekend and you're feeling nervous that you haven't had a chance to rest. Maybe you have homework that you meant to work on over the weekend but didn't, and now the reality that tomorrow is Monday is setting in. Maybe it's a combination of those things. Maybe it's something else entirely. Of course, not everyone's Sunday is the same. Many people work irregular schedules, or the night shift. Some people are retired and don't have to work. Some people set their own schedules, and Sunday, to them, is just another day. But even if you don't currently experience the Sunday Scaries, I'd be willing to bet that you have memories of the feeling I'm describing, especially memories from when you were younger. I'm choosing to begin this video this way because as far as I'm concerned, there is a single recurring event that brings with it a dread that rivals the end of the weekend, and that is the end of summer. This feeling isn't universal either. Many people live in parts of the world where the school year doesn't begin in the fall, or where their summer looks more like my winter, and vice versa. But I'm writing this essay. I can't account for every possible schedule or experience someone somewhere might have. I can only really speak for myself, and in the interest of pacing, this is a blanket acknowledgement that my specific thoughts and feelings are not universal. If you want to leave your actually comment about all the ways in which my experience doesn't perfectly align with yours, you're welcome to do that, but I'm not reading it. Anyway, as the end of summer draws ever closer, I'm thinking, as always, about video games. Specifically, I'm thinking of two stories from two different franchises that have more in common than you may initially realize. Two stories that each, in their own way, grapple not only with the pain of an ending, but with the dread that precedes it. This video will contain spoilers for Kingdom Hearts 2 and The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. You do not need to have played either of these games to understand this video, but if you'd rather experience these stories spoiler-free, this is your warning. This video will also feature this auditory cue to let you know when there's something noteworthy on the screen, so people who are listening to rather than watching this video don't miss out on text or other important visuals. Having said all that, here are two games at the end of summer. So, Kingdom Hearts sure is a series that exists. For the uninitiated, the basic premise is as follows. This delightful anime boy named Sora teams up with Donald and Goofy, yes really, in order to find Riku, his boyfriend, and Kairi, the girl, after their home was overrun by the forces of darkness. If you want a mostly coherent summary of the franchise, I recommend this video by Barry Kramer, but I may make a summary video of my own one day. You can let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Kingdom Hearts is somewhat infamous for being overly complicated and difficult to follow. Fortunately, the main character of the story we're going to talk about today has no idea what's going on either.
Huh? What? Huh? Huh? What? Huh? What were those things? What was that about? What's going on?
Kingdom Hearts 2 is not the second game in the Kingdom Hearts series because everyone at Square Enix is on drugs. Instead, Kingdom Hearts 2 is the third game, a direct sequel to 2004's Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories was on the Game Boy Advance, and it featured a radically different gameplay style from the first game. It's no surprise then that the game didn't sell nearly as well as the original, so many players went into Kingdom Hearts 2 without knowing that there was a game in between. This is important because the end of Chain of Memories sees Sora fall into a deep sleep in order to regain his memories, presumably the Chain of Memories. I don't know, I never played it. Anyway, Sora is still asleep by the time Kingdom Hearts 2 starts. As a result, the game's prologue follows this guy, Roxas, who's doing his best to savor the end of his summer vacation with his friends. If you're wondering what this has to do with Mickey Mouse, the answer is nothing. KH2's prologue is sort of a point of contention among fans of the series. The gameplay isn't particularly interesting, it's very long, and it's not immediately clear how it connects to the first game. Despite this, the story it tells is memorable, captivating, and more than a little heartbreaking. I won't be able to say everything I have to say about the KH2 prologue in this video, but I do plan on talking about it more in the future, so forgive me for anything and everything that I'm going to gloss over while talking about it in this video.
Fine. I see how it is.
Each day you spend with Roxas begins after a glitchy dream sequence made up of key moments from the first game's story. This serves a meta purpose for the player, helping catch them up in case they missed the first game, but it's also clear that Roxas is seeing what we're seeing, and he's being introduced to this cast of characters, most importantly Sora, through these dreams. The first thing we hear Roxas say is,
Another dream about him.
Before he can fully unpack the dream he just woke up from, though, he hears the sound of distant bells and opens the window. Welcome to Twilight Town. Roxas has a busy week ahead of him. He's got to investigate some stolen photographs, do some odd jobs to pay for a trip to the beach, the annual struggle tournament's coming up, there's a homework assignment due, and also his entire life is about to fall apart. He doesn't know that yet, though. Even before things begin to unravel, though, we see Roxas and his friends grappling with the end of summer, dreading the return to school and worrying about staying close with each other as they get older. And all of this is, of course, interspersed with banger lines like these.
So I'm in third now? Oh, baby!
Stolen. And not just the word. They stole it, too.
That was undeniable proof that we totally owned you, lamers.
Get a lot on my mind.
Sorry, man.
And mini-games like these. It's definitely cheesy and silly, but this lighthearted tone is also effective in creating contrast with the moments in which it's clear something isn't right. That all comes to a head when Roxas meets Naminé, the one responsible for Sora's long nap in the sleepy egg, and she tells him the truth. Roxas is, essentially, a part of Sora, and in order for Sora to wake up, Roxas has to be reincorporated into him. In other words, for Sora to live, Roxas must die. But we're not there yet. We'll come back to this in a moment, but for now, brace yourself for whiplash. I'm going to talk about something seemingly completely unrelated, and you're just going to have to trust me that I'm going somewhere with all this. I played Link's Awakening for the first time this year. 2D Zelda's always been kind of a blind spot for me, but I've been trying to change that. And damn, what a place to start. At this point, I've played and replayed both the 1998 DX version as well as the 2019 Switch remake so many times I've actually lost count. And it's shot up to become one of my all-time favorite games in the series. As a disclaimer, I'm probably not going to have as much to say about the story of this Game Boy game from 1993 as I will for a multi-hour sequence in a story-heavy game that's mostly cutscenes. I'll do my best to keep it interesting, though. Bear with me. In this entry, Link washes up on the shores of Koholint Island, and is told by this helpful friend-shaped owl that the only way to leave is to gather 8 instruments in order to wake up the Windfish, a mysterious entity who sleeps in a giant egg that overlooks the island. The people who live on Koholint are as sweet as they are strange, and it's hard not to get attached to this idyllic little world you found yourself in. That's not even mentioning Marin, the girl who initially finds you on the beach and brings you back to her home to recover. She's kind, she has a sense of humor, and I suspect that she has a little bit of a crush on Link. Marin's big moment in the main story comes before the game's 4th dungeon, a scene with her on the beach that's required to progress the story. In this scene, she wonders aloud where the island came from, whether there's anything beyond it. She seems to envy the freedom of the seagulls flying overhead, who are able to travel far and wide and sing for lots of people. I've never personally heard a seagull sing, just to be clear. Most seagulls just steal my hot dogs, and yes, it was 4 years ago, and yes, I'm still upset. After this little heart-to-heart, she follows you around for a little while. There are several cute optional scenes you can see with her, but even just this one required one is endearing enough on its own. And the game is invested in getting you attached to Marin and to Koholint in order to make the eventual reveal hit that much harder. After you finish the 5th dungeon, the owl instructs you to head to the southern shrine on the island. I'm not saying it. You defeat a mini-boss and you enter this darkened room. When you light the torches, you're able to read the relief on the wall.
To the finder, the Isle of Koholint is but an illusion. Human, monster, sea, sky, a scene on the lid of a sleeper's eye. Awake the dreamer and Koholint will vanish much like a bubble on a needle. Cast away, you should know the truth.
Link waking the Windfish won't simply allow him to leave Koholint. It will mean the end of the island altogether, the end of all of its inhabitants, the end of Marin. In other words, for the Windfish to live, Koholint must die. Koholint and Twilight Town have something in common. They don't actually exist. Okay, there is a real Twilight Town, but the one you're in during the KH2 prologue is a computer simulation. We're glossing over the details here for a reason. There are, of course, some superficial similarities between these two stories. For example, the beach, Big Egg, existential dread. More like existential dread. There are some key differences, though, too. For example, Roxas and especially the player both know Sora. As a result, you're likely to be more invested in waking him up. The Windfish, on the other hand, is sort of an enigmatic figure in the story of Link's Awakening. You don't wake him up because he's your favorite anime boy. You wake him because it's the right thing to do, and also because it's the only way to leave the island. One of the biggest differences between the two stories, though, is the involvement of outside forces. Link washes up on Koholint basically by accident, whereas Roxas is deliberately placed into the simulated Twilight Town so that he can be monitored and eventually called on to give up his life in order to wake up Sora. The issue is that the person monitoring him is a scumbag of the highest order. I might hate this guy more than I hate Tears of the Kingdom. Diz. More like Diz nuts. I'm being silly right now, but I'm serious about this guy being a piece of shit. Diz makes it clear that Roxas has an expiration date that's rapidly approaching, and in preparation for that moment, he systematically strips Roxas of everything he has. To be clear, not everything that happens to Roxas during the prologue is strictly Diz's fault. The nobodies, these guys, are clearly there against his wishes, but Diz makes sure that Roxas's friends never get to see what he's going through. The first time the nobodies appear, it catches everyone, including Diz, off guard, but then every time after that, time freezes around Roxas when the nobodies show up in front of other people. Even without fully understanding what he's going through, though, the digital inhabitants of Twilight Town care infinitely more about Roxas than Diz does, and on the second to last day, they talk about their plans to search the town from top to bottom to investigate what's happening to him. Unfortunately, they never get the chance. As Roxas walks into his usual hangout spot the following morning, he discovers that his friends can't see or hear him anymore. They pass right through him, and the photograph from the first day showing Roxas and his friends has been replaced with a version without him. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this was done deliberately, to isolate Roxas, to make him feel more alone than ever. Not long after this, the whole world comes screeching to a halt, leaving the once cozy Twilight Town empty and silent aside from the nobodies roaming the streets. Roxas is called to the mansion, where he meets Naminé. Naminé attempts to reassure Roxas, but he doesn't catch this because Diz grabs her and forces her into a portal. Get your hands off her, you disgusting, race-faking freak! When Roxas asks Diz what will happen to him, he's summarily dismissed and insulted, and by the time he ends up in the egg room, he's exhausted. He's furious. He slashes at the projection of Diz over and over to no avail until the pod opens, and Roxas, having nothing left anyway, grasps the inevitability of the situation he's in. He knows, even if he doesn't understand, how important it is for Sora to wake up. He's coming to peace with it, either for his own sake or in spite of himself, but he doesn't really have a choice in the matter. In contrast, Link very much has a choice to make. The reveal of Koholint's true nature doesn't happen at the end of the story. It happens a little over halfway through. You still have 3 dungeons left to complete, giving you plenty of time to wonder if it's even worth it to wake up the Windfish at all. Koholint doesn't have to disappear. Link can choose to stay in this illusion forever. After all, is it worth it to sacrifice all the inhabitants of the island just so the Windfish can wake up? And yes, of course it is. These people aren't real in-universe, but the Windfish is, and so is Link for that matter. Even if you know that the inhabitants of the island aren't real, though, it doesn't make it that much easier to say goodbye. To Link, it matters that these people are fake, but to the player, well, it's a video game. None of this is real. And if you can suspend your disbelief enough to care about any of these characters, it's difficult not to feel attached to all of them. That's not even mentioning the island itself. Koholint Island is practically its own character that you get to know throughout your time with the game. It's funny to think about how people say the same thing about Breath of the Wild, and that this little game on the Game Boy has as much, if not more, character than this massive open world, but I digress. There's a real sadness to the island disappearing, the feeling that you can never go back. And you, the player, can't either. You know the twist already. You'll never be able to experience the game in this way again. It's the same way for Kingdom Hearts 2's prologue. Even though there's a game that explains Roxas' backstory and how he ended up in the digital Twilight Town, 358 Days Over 2, yes, that is its real name, most people will tell you to play KH2 first because part of what makes it so effective is the player experiencing the same confusion and frustration as Roxas. But I don't think either story is hurt by the knowledge of what eventually happens. In fact, I think there's something uniquely special about these stories on a replay, and it's here that I remind you that this video is about the end of summer. Let's talk about that finally. It's pretty readily apparent what Kingdom Hearts 2's prologue has to do with the end of summer. And though I played KH2 for the first time in late 2020 after the summer had already ended, it's become a tradition to play through the prologue every summer since. Link's Awakening, on the other hand, feels like summer, in a different way. Each time I replay the game, I become more familiar with it. Navigating the island becomes more intuitive. The dungeons feel easier to complete. I know where the secret seashells and the heart pieces are, and as a result, each playthrough feels shorter than the last, is shorter than the last. If you get good enough at the game, there's only a few hours between your arrival on Koholint and its inevitable end. At the beginning of the game, you don't have much freedom in how you get around the island and are constantly keeping track of areas to return to once you have the required item. It feels sort of like being a little kid again. Being told that you can't do something yet is frustrating, but it gives you something to look forward to. The freedom that comes with your new movement options feels great at first, but the more familiar you are with the game, the closer it is to being over. You wonder if you've done enough, if there's unfinished business you have to take care of before you leave this world behind. You wonder if you can find an excuse to linger a little longer. It feels like growing up. You can re-explore the island, but you can never really go back. Speaking of unfinished business, Roxas and his friends never make it to the beach, and they never will, no matter how many times you replay the game. And that feels really real. There are always going to be things that you want to do with your free time but don't get around to. And even if you have the perfect summer, you'll still be haunted by the thought of it ending. Because even though summer comes around every year, you'll never have this one back. No matter how many times you return to the beach, to Twilight Town, to Koholint, it's not the same you anymore. And before you have time to process those feelings, the summer's already over. That sort of melancholy compounds over time. It racks up interest. You'll find yourself missing moments in your life that you didn't even enjoy while they were happening, mourning countless versions of your past self. And you'll never get that closure. But you don't actually need it. The thing about the end of Roxas' summer vacation is that, well, it's the beginning of the rest of the game. The illusory Koholint disappears, but Link and the Windfish are free, and the island is kept alive in a sense in Link's memory. As the Windfish says, it's the nature of dreams to end. The distance you feel from the versions of yourself from summers past is evidence of your ability to grow and change. Maybe your sweetest memories feel far away, but so do your most painful ones. And while the grief never fully goes away, it becomes easier to bear. Summer is like a dream, and it's bittersweet when it ends. Bitter because you can never go back, but sweet because we don't live our lives asleep. We can only live once we wake up. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little different from anything I've made thus far, but I was feeling pretty down about my own summer coming to a close, and writing about it did help. Plus, I got to talk about 2 games I really like, so that's fun. I plan to talk about both of these games more in the future, among other things. But also, college is starting back up, so I'll be pretty busy. I'm sure I'll still find time to work on stuff though. I've been coming up with video ideas long before I had any sort of platform, and it's kind of a dream come true to know that there are people who will watch the things I want to make. At least, I hope so. I'm not sure how this video is gonna do, but at least I had fun making it? Question mark? Thank you so much to my plushies over on Patreon, whose names are currently on screen. Thank you to my big skits, Reach, Jane, Jen, and Fossil Daddy, and a special thanks to my holy skits. Thank you, Triforce. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Redman. Thank you, Rosalina. And thank you, Avery. Your support helps me keep doing what I do, and I cannot tell you how thankful I am. There's actually a Discord server for patrons now, so if you're looking to connect with the community more directly, consider supporting me. I hope you don't blame me for not wanting to run a public Discord server. I think I would pass away. Alright, that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.